Yes, as this week long here at KTAR News, we are looking at different angles of youth violence and youth mental health issues. And so I want to take a look at the youth justice system, at the juvenile justice system, and how it's handled in some cases versus others. I know it's not apples to apples all the time, but joining us to talk about the youth justice system is the Maricopa County Attorney, Rachel Mitchell. Thanks for doing this.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. I appreciate it.
So I have a question, and I know that they have not, and this is not an apples-to-apples comparison, but I'd like to ask the question. We know that there was a charge, youth charged as adults in East Valley violence and the death of Preston Lord, and in other cases we've seen their names. In Phoenix, there were 2 juveniles that have been arrested in connection with the shooting of a Phoenix police officer. They have not been charged as adults, so we don't know their names. What is the deciding factor, or what are some of the deciding factors of when juveniles are then charged as adults?
Well, some of this is governed by just black letter law. Under the statutes in Arizona, if a juvenile is 15, 16, or 17, and they commit certain serious offenses, then we are directed that we shall direct file into adult court. And then there's another section that if the juvenile is 14 or older and they commit certain offenses, we may. And so, in the first situation, it's a shall. In the second situation, we're going to look at the seriousness of the offense, the criminal history, et cetera.
Okay, and that's fair. I'm just curious. I know that when I read it the first time, I looked at that and I wondered why there was an immediate charge in one case and not necessarily in the other. But more specifically about the juvenile justice system, there have been some people that are frustrated, and it seems like at times there's a revolving door for young people. And I understand trying to give kids a second chance, but do you believe the system needs to be revamped? Is the system broken in a way that young people that have shown themselves to be violent are getting away with it more often because they're juveniles? Is that a fair statement, or do you think it's a bit unfair?
I think crime evolves, and that's true for adult crime, and it's true for juvenile crime. And we have to evolve with it. And if, I'm not about just checking a box. I mean, I want the system to work. And so, we say the juvenile justice system is for rehabilitation. Well, then let's rehabilitate, and let's make sure that our programs are effective at doing that. What we are seeing is an explosion of juvenile violence, including and especially gun violence. And obviously, it's not being effective at changing that behavior. So we do need to re-examine that and see what is going to actually work.
Is it true that, and again, I'm coming from a very civilian position on this, is it true that juvenile violent offenders are still sometimes released within a day or two to their parents because they're juveniles? And if that is the case, is that a fair thing to do if they've shown themselves to be repeat offenders, repeat violent offenders?
I think every case has to be looked at individually. And, I mean, certainly those are reasons to keep somebody in if they're a repeat offender or if they're just even a first-time violent offender. One of the things that I want to work on in the upcoming year or so is re-examining the point system by which juveniles are scored to determine whether they're kept in custody or not. It gets out of whack every few years because as crimes are added or changed, they fit in, but maybe they don't fit in a logical way in comparison to other crimes. So we need to relook at that to make sure that we're keeping in people that need to be kept in.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you're talking about that, because the concerns from a lot of people are that a lot of times these kids become very savvy to the system as well, and they understand that being a juvenile, if being charged as a juvenile, they're going to be given multiple chances, and they're not going to be treated as adults until much later on when they've committed more crimes. And I don't know that that's always the case, but that is the fear from a lot of people in the public is, yes, by age, these are kids, but they know the system and they're taking advantage of it.
Well, and something that I think a lot of people don't think about is this. As we've seen with the East Valley cases and other cases, the shooting of the officer, you have both juveniles and adults working in concert together. And what you don't want to do is be so lenient with juveniles that you basically incentivize the adult to say, here, you do it because nothing's going to happen to you. So you have to be very cognizant that dynamic actually does happen out there on the streets.
When you look at this, again, from your position as county attorney, I know that you're getting cases all the time, but now it seems as if these juvenile cases that are coming to your office, obviously you're on the show today because of it, that we in the media are paying much more attention to the crime and punishment side of this as to how it's being handled. Do you think that scrutiny of not your office necessarily, but the system as a whole, do you think that scrutiny is going to lend itself to a better system in the future?
I think it's important for people to communicate to lawmakers what they believe to be important. For example, we're trying to run a bill that requires a parent's permission for a juvenile to have a gun in his or her own home. Right now, the law doesn't require the parent's permission, and that's kind of stalled at the legislature. And that's a very needed piece of legislation. I think it's important for people to get involved so that people know what's going on and legislators know what's important. What gets a little frustrating, I think, is when people presume to know every single thing about a case, because that's simply not the case. It's the reason we try things in court and not in the media.
Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell is joining us for a few moments. We're talking about teen violence from the punishment side, from the prosecution side of things. When you look overall at this, and I know you can't be case specific, but when you look at juvenile crimes and violent crimes, is there an increase? Are you seeing an increase in violent crimes by juveniles, or is it just that we in the media are paying more attention to it, so we are reporting it more often?
No, we are absolutely seeing it. We're seeing it anecdotally, but we're also seeing it with just some hard statistics. And that's not just Maricopa County or even Arizona. It's nationwide. We are seeing an uptick in violence in general and gun crimes in particular.
And so this bill that you would like to pass, can you explain a little bit more with this parental? So you're saying whether they can't have handguns, but if someone that's under the age of 18 wants to have a rifle, they have to have parental permission. But right now, that's not the case.
Juveniles cannot possess weapons except under certain circumstances, such as for hunting or right. Some sort of sporting thing. They also can possess it in their own residence. What the law doesn't say is so long as the parents are okay with that. And so we have had situations where parents are calling the police and saying, please come and get this gun away from my kid because I don't think good things are going to happen. And the police are not able to do that because under the law, the minor is allowed to have that gun. And so what we requested to be run was a bill that said, yeah, you can have it in your home so long as the parents are okay with that. And that has stalled out at the legislature. And, this is not the time to stall out on that kind of case or bill. And
would this law allow for a parent to change their mind? So if a parent says, sure, of course, for hunting or otherwise, my child can possess a firearm. But if something changes, if the child misbehaves or something happens as far as a parent's fears now change in this or concerns change, can they revoke that permission?
Yeah, the bill basically is sort of a moment in time kind of thing, the way it's written, that they can have the gun so long in their residence, so long as the parents agree to that.
Well, I appreciate that. I didn't know that bill had been run, but you're right. We should know about that, and parents should be aware of it. I appreciate the time today. This has been a growing concern. We've been doing this all week long about mental health and teen violence, but I didn't know that we'd gotten a perspective on the issue of the justice system for juveniles and rehabilitation versus punishment. So I appreciate the update today, as always.
Absolutely. Anytime, Mike.
All right. That is Rachel Mitchell, Maricopa County Attorney, with a bit of insight, and I thought some great insight.
Thanks for watching The Mike Broomhead Show. Tap to watch and listen to the new season of Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast. You can also click the button in the middle to subscribe.